Daf Dalid. We're going to start with the Mishnah on Daf Gimel Amid Beis towards the bottom of the Amid, learning that we may not receive the Machzis HaShekel, not from Goyim, nor from Kutim. Throughout Shas, we have this debate whether Kutim, which is a nation that Sancheiriv moved into Eretz Yisrael, and they ultimately converted because of fear. There were lions that normally keep away from habitated areas. They were entering their cities and eating up people. So they are known as the Geirei Aroyos. They converted because of fear. Whether that is considered a valid conversion, do they have a din of a yid? Whether it's or whether not, whether they're not considered yidin, we're going to see how that will play into the understanding of our Mishnah. The Mishnah does specify generally Nachrim, Goyim, and Kutim that we may not receive Machzis HaShekel from them. We will also be learning about the din of a kolboin. A kolboin is a small coinage, a small payment that either some needed to be added to the Machzis HaShekel or always needed to be added to the Machzis HaShekel. As we will learn, that's a machlekes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. We'll explain it when we learn the Mishnah. And we're going to learn about the inverse relationship that exists between the payment of a kolboin and the din of Meiser Behema. We'll speak all this out while we learn through the sugya. We're going to be learning about Tfisas Habayis, which is what we will call the holding of an estate after the passing of the patriarch, before the children make the division. We don't view the children as partners, but we view actually the father being still the owner. The children are simply standing in the shoes of their father, and how that again will affect kolboin and Meiser Behema in an opposite way. We're going to have more prati dinim regarding not being allowed to accept Machzis HaShekel, and really that's certainly included. We were not allowed to accept donations from the Goyim when it came to the building of the Beis HaMikdash, nor for temple upkeep. We're going to learn about a difference between getting something specific, getting a davar mesuyim, versus accepting something that's not distinct. There is a machlekes. Rabbi Yochanan holds that we make such a distinction. We're going to be learning about the principle of bereira, of retroactive clarification, and a lot more. As we say, v'nosati locha mahalchim, it's jammed dafim, so we're going to have to, with God's help, go a little bit quicker. So let's go daf gimel amid beis halacha dalid, the Mishnah towards the bottom of the amid. Says the Mishnah, even though we just said above that we don't take a pledge, we don't extract a pledge from women, from slaves, and from minors. However, avalim shaklu, but if they on their own came and gave us a half a shekel, mekablin miyadan, we accepted from them, and this is a novelty. Let's quickly read inside the tiklin chadatin, 3 lines before the bottom of the amid. What's the novelty of that? Says the tiklin ubelvad sheyimsuru letzibur legamre. As we spoke out yesterday, the communal fund of the Machzis HaShekel has to belong to the tzibur. If someone gives towards that fund, if they are obligated to give it, then they'll really give it. If someone is only doing it optionally, they might not fully give over their half a shekel for a good reason. They're going to want to, so to say, still own it, for them to have an individual part of the communal carbon, which is something that may not happen. So when the Mishnah says that we may receive it from them, but we have to make sure that they give it over legamre. I'm reading in the Tiklin Chadatin, Deloy lehevi carbon sibur karev Michel Yachid. However, back in the Mishnah, but Hanachri v'Hakuti, Goyim, Kutim again is this nation that Sancheiriv moved into Israel. They converted because they were afraid of a certain phenomena that was unnatural, that was happening to them. And being that they were, so to say, they were not motivated with the emes. It's not only that this was not their initial motivation. We care more what is their motivation when they go to the mikvah. So throughout Shas, we have a machlokes tanoim, whether they are considered true converts, Dinei Yisrael, even though that we found out that they never really abandoned their idol worship, and they didn't interpret the Torah the way God explained the oral Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. or whether we consider them from the beginning goyim, and we'll see soon how to understand the Mishnah. So nachrim and kutim sheshaklu, if they gave the half a shekel, ein mekabelin mehem, we don't receive it from them. And now we are continuing to say what else we do not receive from them. Now, who is the them that will be included in the next line of the Mishnah will be further clarified in the Gemara, whether we are focusing now only on the nachrim, only on the kutim, on both of them. Ein mekabelin miyodam, nor do we accept from them kinei zavim, the pair of birds that a zav, who's a major zav, will bring after his shivas nekiyim. Nor v'kinei zav voice. Every time a woman becomes a zav gedolah, not only does she need shivas nekiyim and go to the mikveh only afterwards, but she also would bring a pair of birds. And v'kinei yoldois, the birds that a woman who gave birth brings on day 41 after a boy, on day 81 after a girl. We do not accept any of that from, again, from Nachrim, from Kutim. We'll see who are referring to B'chlal. Do Nachrim subscribe to these halachas? Do they know how to count? Do they know these dinim for which the Mishnah has to say we don't receive it? The Gemara is going to deal with that. Nor do we accept from them not chatois nor ashamois. And as the Mishnah points out, Zahaklal, this is the rule. Kol shenidar v'nidav. Any carbon that is given by donation, like a carbon oila, that is the only one that mekabel in miyad, and we receive it from them. However, in other words, any carbon that is a carbon of obligation, we don't receive it from them. And as it says in Ezra, it's not for you and for us to together build the house of God. In other words, Goyim cannot participate in the building, nor, as we will see in the temple upkeep, a lot more details. And really, a machloikas Rabbi Zajac and Ish Lakish in the Gemara. Daf Daled on the top, furthering in the Mishnah. Now, Haltkop, we are learning about the kolboin. The word kolboin is a composite of kal, which means something light or relatively insignificant. And then boin comes from the word bain. Now, first, let me speak about Shitas Chachamim, and then we'll go to Shitas Rabbi Meir. Being that during this time of the year, which is during the month of Adar, all of the Yidden, ba'aretz, b'chutz la'aretz, are obligated to give a half a shekel, and many who are not obligated opted to give the half a shekel. So if you were then to go to a banker, and you would have, let's say, one sela. A sela is 2 half a shekels. And again, just to make it clear, a half a shekel is equivalent to 2 dinarim. The Torah calls it a half a shekel. In the times of the Mishnah, we call this a shekel. It's 2 dinarim. Double the half a shekel, or since the Mishnah calls the half a shekel, so what will be the next coinage? A sela. A sela is the equivalent to 4 dinarim. If you were to have 1 sela, and you would want to exchange it by a money changer and to get 2 shekels, he would charge you a fee, a certain small coinage known as a kolboin. In the Mishnah itself, we will see a machlokes how much was the value of a kolboin. All right, a nickel. It doesn't matter the exact amount. Because since many people wanted that coin, it gave it during that time of the year an added value. Now, the Chachamim hold that when a person is going to be given a sela, right, and the temple treasurer is going to give you change, so then for sure you have to pay the kolboin because it has that value. The Chachamim hold that whenever you would give, let's say, 2 separate dinarim, both of them together makes up the biblical half a shekel. You also have to give the kolboin, because if you were to go and give a banker 2 dinarim, making it into 1 full half a shekel, you would have to give this little nominal fee. In other words, whenever you are not giving the half a shekel, according to the Chachamim, you would have to give the kolboin. And Rav Meir goes further. Rav Meir holds that even when you give a half a shekel, Rav Meir holds that you always have to add the kolboin. We'll see the reason for Rav Meir in the Gemara. It's more than that. According to Rav Meir, the adding of the kolboin is a biblical obligation. According to the Chachamim, it's not a biblical obligation. It's only a rabbinic obligation. And this is something that will play its way out in our Mishnah. So the Mishnah is beginning with the sheet of the Chachamim. It's not a biblical obligation to add it. You don't have to add it if you give the exact half a shekel. But whenever you are not giving the exact coinage, even though the Beis HaMikdash is not losing anything, even though the Beis HaMikdash, in many scenarios, if it's not a pure half a shekel, add the kolboin. The Elu shechayavim bekolboin, and according to the Tanach, since it's not a biblical obligation, then there are those who don't have to give it. Let's begin with the kohen. If you remember yesterday, we learned the whole machlokes whether b'chlal kohanim are obligated to give or not. Be that as it may, the kohen doesn't have to give the korban. It's Leviim, Yisraelim, V'gedim, V'avadim. Now, this Mishnah definitely holds that they are obligated to give. It's only that we don't take from them a mashkin. Because if they would not be obligated to give, if you remember yesterday, kohanim and Leviim are in the same boat. If they are exempted, then it's not only kohanim that are exempted, then Leviim should be exempted as well. Right? Neither of them were part of the census. They were not oived al hapikudim, if that's the way we translated pikudim. But as we will see, this is shitas Tanakama, shitas chachamim. Kolbein is not a din d'oraisa. It's only like a certain, extra amount of money that the chachamim felt, and the chachamim have the right to say that from kahanim you don't take it. But you do take it from Leviim, Yisraelim, the Gedim, the Avadim, Mishuchrarim, Avaloi, not from Kehanim, nor from Nashim, nor from Avadim, nor from Ketanim. Especially those who are there that are not obligated to give. If they're not obligated to give, so we can view their half a shekel to begin with as a gift. So the whole thing is a gift. So they don't have to give a gift plus a little gift. Now, next thing in the Mishnah, what happens? Hashoikel Aliyah coin. If someone is giving on behalf of a coin, or if someone is giving on behalf of a woman, or if someone is giving Aliyah Evid or Aliyah Katan, in all of these cases, says the Mishnah, they are pater. They are pater. The case exactly will be is the person is giving a selah, and they're getting back from the temple treasurer the shekel. So if you would be giving it for yourself, that is exactly where the Chachamim hold. You have to give the kolbain. You're giving a selah, you're getting back a shekel. But since you're giving it as a gift, and that's the key, you're giving it as a gift for people that they themselves would not have to give the kolbain, even though you are the one that is giving it. Nevertheless, you don't have to give the kolbain. And furthermore, as many of the Tiklan Chadatin and many other of the Mefarshim hold that even if you give one coin and you're not one change, you're giving a selah, which is 2 shkalim, one for you, one for the kohen, you also don't have to give the kolbain. According to the Chachamim, when you give a shekel, half a shekel, you don't give the kolbain. It's only when you need change. Here, you're not getting change. If I care, you're giving it as a gift for someone who, if they would be giving it, they wouldn't have to give the kolbain. You don't have to give a kolbain. So you covered yourself and the eved and the isha by giving a selah without adding the kolbain. Now, but if you're giving one selah on behalf of you and on behalf of a fellow yid, but a fellow yid not as a gift, that's the key, as a loan. So I'm giving it for me and for you, and I'm going to ask later from you the half a shekel back. Then you have to give the kolbain. Then you're chayiv a kolbain. But how much? 1 kolbain. Because according to the Tanakama, the din kolbain is not a din d'oraisa. So it's not a din on every giver of a half a shekel. If you give one selah for me and I get back half change, which is what I should get back, I only have to give 1 kolbain. So even though I'm covering 2 people, I'm giving the selah for me and for my fellow Jew as a loan. Say that give one kolbain. However, Rav Meir, as we explained, Rav Meir holds the din of adding this little nominal fee is a din d'oraisa, and it's even if you give the straight half a shekel coin. In other words, every Jew that gives a half a shekel has to give 1 kolbain. So if I'm going to give 1 selah, which is 2 half shekels for me and for you, I have to give the selah and two kolbains. Base kolbanos. Another din. Now this din will be clarified in the Gemara. Hanois and selah v'noitel shekel. The normal case, you're giving the selah and you're getting back from the temple treasurer what the Mishnah calls a shekel, what the Torah would call a half a shekel. So here says the Mishnah, you have to give 2 kolbanos. Wow. Because if I give 1 selah and I'm not getting change, the selah is half for me, half for you, not for you as a gift, for you as a loan. I have to give, according to the Tanakama, 1 kolbain. If I'm giving a selah and I'm getting back change, and here the Mishnah says 2 kolbanos, so the Gemara is going to have to clarify, is this Rabbi Meir? Or is this going to be the Chachamim? And why, according to the Chachamim, will there be a need of 2 kolbanos? And if that will be the case, what will be Shitas Rav Meir? That's a little bit of a stretch that will leave for Amud Beis, and we have to get there. Weiter. Hashoikel ad yad oni. As we pointed out, if I'm giving on behalf of a man who's obligated to give, the Mishnah says ani because I'm giving it for him as a gift. That's the key. I'm giving it for someone as a matana, or I'm giving it for my neighbor. Or I'm not going to ask them their money back. But al yad ben iroi. Okay. So again, I'm giving a seller. And not only am I giving a seller, I'm not giving it for me and for him. I'm only giving it for him. You know what that means? It means that the temple treasurer will have to give me back a shekel. I already gave my shekel. Now I have a seller. I'm only giving it as a gift, but they have to give me back change. Even here, says the Mishnah Potter. Wow. Oh, this is for sure the Tanach, for sure the Chachamim. Even though really the half a shekel has a value this time of the year, and normally we don't want that, so to say, potential that potential value to be taken away from the temple. The concept of when I give it for someone else, if the temple is not receiving it from the one that's obligated to give it, then there is an exemption of paying the kolban. The im hilvan, but in the above case, if I'm lending it to the ani, I'm giving to the temple treasurer a seller. I'm getting back a half a shekel on behalf of my neighbor, on behalf of my fellow landsman. But I'm going to later extract payment from him. So when I give it to the Beis Hamikdash, I'm viewed as his shliach. So then, since he's chayiv to give, that's the key, then you have to give the kolboin. Then I have to add the kolboin. If I would be giving it on behalf of a woman or of a minor who's not obligated to give, that's something else. Then bachlal, I would never have to give, ever have to give the kolboin, because they, to begin with, don't have to give it. They are opting to give it. The whole thing is a gift. But the moment I'm giving it on behalf of a yid that's mechoyev to give it, and I'm giving it as a loan, then I have to add the kolboin. Now, like this, speak of this out, very important. When two partners own in partnership animals, so that biblical mitzvah of tithing the animals with all of the details, it's from the kosher species, some non-domesticated animals, and then you have to know how to put the animals that were born in this halachic year together in a pen, and you move them out of a narrow passageway, and you count them, and the 10th one is painted with black ink, with red ink, and you say that the Ho'asiri Yakoidish. That din of Ma'aser Behema is only if you own the animal. If it belongs to partners, the partners are exempt of giving Ma'aser Behema. Remember that. Shutfim are exempt of. Another din, when a person passes away and he has sons, but they did not yet divide the estate, that estate is being held in what's called in the Mishnah Tfisas Habayis, the holding of the estate. Who exactly owns it? The Torah does not view the sons as partners. It's amazing. It's still viewed as property of the father, but the sons are in the place of the father. What did we learn in the Mishnah? That if I give machzis shekel for you as a gift, no din of kolboin. So if an estate, before it was divided, from the estate's fund, the shekel, the seller will be given, let's say, make it simple, there were two sons. The seller was given for both sons. No kolboin has to be paid. Why? According to the Tanach. Why? Because it's, so to say, still being given by the father. It's gavaldik for his sons, even though the father is not alive. But they are not viewed as partners. They're viewed as it's the father's estate. But on the other hand, if that estate has animals that was born into it, those animals have to be tithed because they don't belong to partners. Because it belongs to the Tfisas Habayis, it belongs to the father. So whenever there is a estate prior to division, this is the inverse relationship. If from the estate that the shekel will be paid for the brothers, there's going to be an exemption of the kolboin because they're not viewed as partners. It's the father. Or if it's the father, then you're chayiv to give Ma'aser Behema. If the brothers divided the estate and then they decided to make a partnership, now they're viewed as shutfim. Now it's Deer's partnership. Now they will be exempt of Ma'aser Behema because partners are exempt of Ma'aser Behema. But on the other hand, partners, if we as partners give a seller to the Beis Hamikdash, half for me, half for you, we have to add the kolboin. We have to add the kolboin. Whenever we don't give, according to the Chachamim, whenever we don't give separate half a shekel, one seller, even though they're keeping the whole thing, a kolboin has to be added. So the Mishnah says, ha'achim, that later choose to become shutfim. That means they divided the estate. No more tfisas habayis. Then they partnered up. So now it's not owned by the father. Now it's two people, so they're going to be chayiv and a kalboin. But since they are partners, if animals are born into them as partners, they will be paturim and ma'aser behema. But before they divided the estate, even though it looks like it's the same, but it's not viewed halachically as the same. So therefore, then if it's called tfisa sabayis, so there's no din of shutvis, and therefore the chayiv and ma'aser behema. But the upside will be that if taka it's still viewed as property of the dad, children are simply in the place of their father, but it belongs to the father who's going to be giving it on behalf of his children, so to say, even though he's not physically alive, then paturin min akalbain, because that's the din we learned in the Mishnah, that when one gives a gift for another, even for others who are obligated to give, they are exempt of paying the kalbain. Now, how much is a kalbain? So here we have a machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Meir holds it's a ma'ah of silver. Just to know, a ma'ah is a sixth of a dinar. From here on, it's easy. Because one dinar is a half of a shekel, what we call a shekel. What the Mishnah calls a shekel is 2 dinarim, like we said. A shekel is a half of a selah. The kitzur amma is a sixth of the dinar, and the chachamim hold it's half of that. Chachamim hold that the kalbain is a half a ma'ah. Again, a ma'ah is a sixth of a dinar is a half of a shekel. The kitzur is a relatively insignificant amount of money, but that was the money that one would have paid to a banker during that time of the year when there was, so to say, a shortage or a high demand for a half shekel coin. Says the Gemara.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Is the Torah encouraging partnership? What's the reason they're pater from this?
I said, let's leave it as Xeris HaKosov. Tzvika's giving a svara that maybe the Torah is encouraging partnership by exempting partners of Ma'aser Behema. Interesting. Okay, says the Gemara. We are focusing on the words of our Mishnah that we just learned. The Mishnah uses the words that if nashim avadim and katanim, right? Im shaklu, if they gave, we receive. As we learned the Tiklan Chadatin, what does that imply? If they give, we receive it. That means they're not even obligated to give. We don't even demand it of them. Ha litvaya ein toivim. But that's a contradiction with the Mishnah that we learned on Nav Gimel Amid Beis on the top of the Amid. Hacha is not here. Actually, Hacha means there. Hacha means in the prior Mishnah we said that Toivin, because the Mishnah said, if you look inside the Gemara on Daf Gimel Amid Beis, the Gemara right after the top Mishnah, after Halacha Gimel, the Gemara inferred from the Mishnah, you don't take a mashkin. You don't take a mashkin implies you ask for payment, but you don't coerce payment. So are you Toiveya? Are they chayiv, but you don't take a mashkin, or are you not even? They're not even chayiv. Answers the Gemara. No, kan again means the prior Mishnah is bishehevi beisa'ados. We're focusing on the cotton. If the cotton is 13 years old and his body began to mature, we're following our understanding of the Gemara. That means he's in between 13 and 20. That is indeed where he's chayiv. So you ask the half shekel, Elamah, you don't take a mashkin. And we spoke out yesterday that he's chayiv only midrabanan, but there's a chiyuv. Our Mishnah, when the Mishnah says that if they give, you take it, which implies that they're not even obligated to give, yeah, it's focusing on the minor. The minor is not even 13 years old. He doesn't have yet the 2 sa'aris, even being 13 without the 2 sa'aris is like he's less than 13. And not only do you not take the mashkin, but he's not even chayiv midrabanan yet. If he gives it, then you receive it from him. There's a big talk, even how can you receive it from him? Guys, we normally know that a minor, that a katan, doesn't have the koyach to bequeath something, to be makna something to someone else. A katan might acquire because of darkei shalom. That's a whole discussion over here, but nevertheless, we see over here that if the katan gives it, we do receive it from him, says the Gemara. Now we have to clarify the flow of the Mishnah. We didn't only speak about Nachman, but we threw in the pile, we threw in the group, also Kutim. So Amar Abba, or in the parentheses, Amar Abba, that Tiftor, let us understand from our Mishnah that our Mishnah holds, Kim Manda Amar, that a Kuti is Kenakri. Because we're putting them together. And that is a Chiddush. How is that a Chiddush? Because the Ispalgin, because this is really a disagreement amongst Tanoim. You have to mamish love this new way of writing, of expression. And we quote here the Mishnah. He calls them Geirei Arroyos. And since they did not do it L'Shem Shemaim, it's not a conversion. Rashbak says, no, Geirei Emes. It doesn't matter that if what initiated their process was fear, but when they were makabel mitzvahs, at that moment they were makabel the mitzvahs. Rashba goimer kuti ki Yisrael l'chol davar. Our Mishnah, again, l'choura, that's the way the Rabbah is saying that a kuti is like a nachri. He has a din of a nachri. Says the Gemara, Omar Rab Lezer. What do you have such a name? Now, it was Rabbi Eliezer or Rabbi Elazar, but it's like Hamish. Omar Rab Lezer, that our Mishnah is only speaking about nachrim. The latter part of the Mishnah that says you don't accept from them. Chatois and hashamois cannot be referring to kutim. Habe kutim, we do accept chatois. And Vitani came, and actually we have a Befeira Shabraisa says the Amoida over there in Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Lezer. I'm right because it says in the Braisa Adam. This is today's parsha. Adam ki yakrif mikem. On which the Braisa says Adam l'Rabbis es hagedim, and he understands gedim pshita to include kutim. Mikem lo hitzias amumrim. But bottom line is nachrim are people that are included in the parsha of Kabbanis. So he holds that from whom do we not accept Korban Chiyuv, Chatas, and Hashamois, only not from Nachrim, but yes from Kutim. Says the Gemara, Masnisin, Pligai al Rabbi Lezer. Our Mishnah will now pose a difficulty on his opinion, because it says in our Mishnah, Ein Mekablin mi Yadam. We don't accept from them Kinei Zavim, Vizavais, and Kinei Yoldos. Now, who is that line referring to? Is it referring to not accepting it from the Goyim? It doesn't make sense. Goyim don't, aside of the fact that there's no Tuma Midorais on Goyim, but they don't know these dinim. They don't keep these dinim. So there was no need for the Mishnah to say you don't accept them from them. It must be referring to Kutim. All right? It must be referring to Kutim. And therefore, how can you say that we do accept karbanos that are of a chiyuv, right? That we do accept it from them. How can we say that? What? How can you say that goyim? That's his raya, very good. That we accept. No. A kasha on him, because in our Mishnah, that line is speaking about we don't accept it from the kutim. We don't accept it from them. Like Rabbah, not like Rabbi Lezer. So the Gemara says, hold on, if that's the case, if we refuted Rabbi Lezer, so Ella, the problem is like this. When the Mishnah began telling us from whom we do not accept, the first name mentioned was Nachrim. Kutim were mentioned second, which l'chayda means we're mainly focusing on Nachrim. So if the Mishnah begins with Nachrim, and you're telling me that this one-liner cannot be referring to Nachrim, because Pshita, they would never give it. That must be referring to Kutim. So Reisha ben Nachrim, Sefer Kutim. So the Gemara says, yeah, that's the way it's going to have to be. Kain, who? Reisha ben Nachrim, the Sefer Kutim. Bottom line is that we proved that Rabbah is correct, and we rejected Shitas Rab Lezer. Says the Gemara, this whole concept that we do not accept from Goyim for the building of the Beis HaMikdash, for the Beis HaMikdash, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, that's only Bat Chila. That was only when the temple was, when we were beginning to build the Beis HaMikdash. That is where we say, Ein mikabel mehem, we don't accept from Goyim, Loi davar mesuyim, not something that's distinct, that later the Goy can say, you see that? I gave that, and not even davar she'ena mesuyim, garnished. However, V'soif, that Tiklin says, but after the temple was built, so now, mikabel mehem davar she'ena mesuyim, the only thing we may not receive from them is a mekabel mehem davar masuyim. In other words, a davar masuyim, to have an article in the Beis HaMikdash that was given directly by a goy, that is the only issue. But once the Beis HaMikdash was already built, then we could be mekabel from them no money. We could be mekabel from them something that is not distinctive. Now it's interesting that the Tikkun Chadatin explains what will be the logic behind that. I mean, it's all based on the pasuk that we brought from Ezra. Loy lachem v'lanu livnis beis Elokeinu. But so the Tiklin writes that Betchila Sabinyan, I'm looking inside the second column in the Tiklin, the second line from the top. In other words, they are giving money simply to gain foothold, to be a partner in order to undermine the building. So if the whole fear is that they want to undermine the building, once it's built, you can take. But there's another issue that if they give something Mesuyam, then they're going to always say it's like it looks bad for the Jewish people. What we could not have given them a Naira, we could not have given the Shulchan. So therefore, Davar Mesuyim don't take. So these are the two issues. Back inside the Gemara. However, Rab Shimon ben Lakish disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan and he's more strict. Amar, bein batchila, bein basoif, whether you are beginning to build, whether it's already built, ein mekabel mehem loy davar mesuyim, and not even davar she'enoi mesuyim. The Rambam clearly does not apply these dinim to a Beis HaKnesses, Beis HaMedrash, in which he holds that we are allowed to take donations from goyim. This is a very interesting halachic topic, but let's go weiter. Says the Gemara that masnisin, this is a braisa, pligai, will again pose a difficulty on the understanding of Rabbi Yochanan, because it says in a braisa, ein mekabel mehem hegdish unedava lebedek habayis. The braisa does not differentiate, right? And l'chayra, according to Rabbi Yochanan, if the Beis HaMikdash was already built and they're giving money for the temple upkeep, which is not a davar mesuyim, it should be permitted. So answers the Gemara, Pasar law, Rabbi Yochanan will interpret the Braisa, Bein Betchila, Bein Basoif, and the Braisa does not make that differentiation, but when do we not accept from them an item for Bedek Habayis, Ulevad Davar Mesuyim, only something that's distinctive is what the Braisa is referring to. If it's not distinctive and it's Basoif, then you could receive it. In the parentheses, Nusach Yeshena, or Yashan, that Pasar law, Rabbi Yochanan will explain that the Braisa is, now here we have to change the girsa, like the Tiklin says, Batchila, the Braisa is only speaking about in the beginning of the building. And as we spoke out, that in the beginning of the building, since there's a fear that they're only giving money to have a foothold, and later they're going to use that to undermine the building, even ma'oisot, even money, which is not a davar mesuyam, yoylichem liyam hamelech. Okay, the Shlakish, right, the Shimon ben Lakish, Amar, that bein betchila bein basoif ein mekabel mehem loy davar mesuyam, and not even a davar she'eina mesuyam. That's the bechuli. Says the Gemara. Hold on, our Mishnah, pligai al Rab Shimon ben Lakish seems to pose a difficulty on a shita. Now, not our Mishnah here in Shekalim, but our Mishnah in Erechin, because it says the Tanei Hakoil Shavin. There we're speaking about an erech vow. If a person uses the words erech, erki olai, erkacholai, the Torah subscribes based on age and gender a specific amount for every person. Now, what happens if a non-Jew says, he points to a Jew and he says, his erech is on me? He makes the erech vow. Or what happens if a Jew is making the erech vow, but the subject of the erech vow, the Jew that's making the pledge, is pointing to a goy and saying that that person's erech alai. So there's a machloikes tanoim between Ameir and Rabbi Yehuda. Each one holds only one of such vows work. But says the Mishnah that Hakoil Shavin, both Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda, that if we're not speaking about the unique erech vow, if we're speaking about a normal neder vow, which means if I say my monetary value, I'm donating to the temple. Now my monetary value is not based on age and gender, but it's very custom made. There they would evaluate how much is that person worth in a slave market. So there he holds regarding goyim that both they could make such a pledge and vinidarim, they can be subject to such a pledge. Now, they can make a pledge means that if he makes the pledge, he'll have to give it to the Beis HaMikdash. How can that be? According to the Shlakish, we never accept money from Goyim for the Bedek Habayis. So answers the Gemara, Pasar Law, Shlakish will explain the Mishnah in Erechin that it's speaking about a pledge for a Korban Oila. Korban Oila, Korbanos are offered by Goyim, like we learned in our Mishnah. Kol Davar, right? Shenidar v'nidav. Let's focus on the oila. There's a whole topic about the shlamim, but for sure an oila will be brought to the Beis HaMikdash. So now the Gemara says, Nicha noidrin oila. Makes sense if he is the one that's making a vow. But how would you understand nidarin oila? What are you saying that someone he's subject to a vow? And what are you telling me? That if someone made that pledge, someone can place an obligation of an oila on a goy? So the Gemara says the meaning of the nidarim would be, a yid said, I'm taking upon myself to bring an oila. And the goy heard that pledge and he says, Masha Omar ze olai. So then, so now he will also be subject to bringing a korban oila, but the only thing that we accept is a korbanos, but not Not only not money for the building, but not even money for the temple upkeep, even if the temple was already fully built. Now it says the Gemara, asks the Gemara, hold on, every time you bring a carbon oil, it has to come also with nesachim. Maybe even nesachim. And part of the nesachim is flour. Part of the nesachim is the wine. And if you remember, we learned in Menachos that when they bring the flour, when I donate the flour, even though I didn't specifically donate flour, I pledged to bring a carbon oil, the amount of flour has to heap above the vessel. But then when the kohen begins to do the avodah, he levels it out, and there will be always a surplus of flour. And that money will belong, that flour belongs to the temple. But what happened with all that? Didn't we learn that Moised Nesachim does not go to buy klei shadas inun? It does go for temple upkeep. So again, Yudesh Lakish that holds that we never may receive money for goyim for temple upkeep, but the oil, yeah, so what? Every time it brings an oil, there will be some surplus that will be used for klei shadas. So nimtza maybe davar she'einoi mesuyim. That's the girsa. So this is not a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, but it's a kasha on Eish Lakish. So answers the Gemara, Hasiv, that's replying. Hasiv, Rabbi Yossi, Bad, Rabbi Bun. Hold on. I'll answer you by asking a question. For Hataninan, when we learned in the Mishnah regarding the Erech, and again, Machlokes, Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, either Nerachim or only Orchim. So in such cases, Loila Bedek Habayis Inun, doesn't that money go to the Bedek Habayis? So how do you resolve that? Heich ma da'at Omar. The only thing you can say is Tamon la Shomayim ukum eschav. And that over there in the Erech vows, the reason why we do accept it from the Goy is because when he made an Erech vow, what he meant, what he thought is that the money that he will be given will be going for a carbon. And by the way, he's allowed to give a carbon. So when the Goy has in mind to give money for a carbon, and it only turns out that halachically that money is going to be going for the Bedek Habayis, that's not a problem. It's only Umeileim Heiboim LeBedek Habayis, and such monies may be received from a Goy. So the same will be over here regarding Nidorim. Noidirim v'Nidorim, Kain at Omar Afhache, that even in the case where the Goy made such a pledge, he made a pledge to bring an oila. The din is that when you bring an oila and you bring flour and there's a surplus of the flour and that's sold and the value goes to buy klei shadas, that's not what the Goy had in mind. He had in mind to bring a carbon. So afach l'shmaim u'mischaven davdal adam beis, and it's only umei eileim heiboim either lebedek habayis or leklei shadas. That even according to Reish Lakish is not a problem. Now the Gra takes out the next three words ma avad la, and now Shimon ben Lakish, the second line on davdal adam beis, will explain the source of his stringency, that Reb Shimon ben Lakish pasad law, he so to say clarifies, he substantiates his shita based on the pasuk that we had in the Mishnah, where it says, Loi lochem v'lanu libnei beis Elokeinu. And he understands that to be under no circumstances may the goyim be involved, not in construction, nor even in temple upkeep. Obviously, the big question everyone has is that we know, right, we had the Shar Shushan Abira, that the Persians, they were involved in the building of the temple and in the temple upkeep. This poses a challenge both on Rabbi Yochanan and on Reish Lakish, but let's go on by it. Says the Gemara, Rab Chizkiya, Omar Rab Simon. Sho'al. Remember the word Sho'al? We had this before. Sho'al does not mean he asked a question, meaning he did not know. In Talmud Yerushalmi, Sho'al means he knew. He wanted to know if others agree with him. Do you guys agree that may atom, right, based on the above, does it not follow, according to this concept, that we may not accept something that's mesuyam, and even when it comes to the initial building, even according to Rabbi Yochanan, not even davar she'ena mesuyam, and according to Reish Lakish, never that ein mekabel mehem, that we should not accept money from the goyim to repair the Amas Hamayim, the canal that went through the Azara, nor through Chaymas U'ir, the walls around, it means Yerushalayim, nor Umigdal Oiseh, the towers of Yerushalayim, Al Shem, Shenemar, based on this pasuk, that Loy Lochem ein Chelek. And indeed, he's just making a statement. Don't you guys agree, if that's the case, that we don't accept these funds from the non-Jews? In other words, there are certain parts of the building of even Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash that has to come dafka from Eden. Now, the next 5 lines are lines that we will learn. We're not going to read them or I can read them, I'm not going to interpret them, and then many take them out, or at least here they are in the parentheses, because the Gemara right afterwards is going to repeat them and clarify what it means. I don't mind reading the words, Elu chayavim bekalbin tani, Elu chayavim bekalbin echad, Ameir oimish nein kolbanos, masnisa, the Rav Meir, the Rav Meir, afapi shein shikloi, toira, kilbanoi toira. Savar Rav Meir, b'misha shikloi shalom shupatam ekalbin, the Amar. And that now we'll start reading right after the parentheses. Says the Gemara, that and there's so many different nuschos. We have here written masnisa. Really, we're going to read the words my tama. The Gemara is asking my tama that Rav Meir. Notice when we learned the Mishnah, we explained that the reason why the Chachamim said that in certain circumstances, rabbinically, you have to add a kalbain. That's because during the time of the year, everyone wanted the half a shekel. So if you were to go then to a banker, he would charge you a kalbain. So you can say that it has that value. Even when you don't take it from the Beis HaMikdash, I'm giving a coin for me and for you. You're not getting change. No, but if you're not giving the temple a direct chatzi shekel, then add a kalban. Rav Meir doesn't hold that. Rav Meir holds even if you're giving the temple treasurer, you're giving the gizber a half a shekel or what they call the shekel. You always have to add a kalban. Why did they hold so? My Talmud Rav Meir. So the Gemara says that the Amar Rav Meir, that's a din d'oraisa. That keshem sheshikli toira, just like giving it a shekel is a din d'oraisa, kach kalbanoi is a din d'oraisa. Everyone that gives a half a shekel, no matter how he is giving it, always will have to add the kalbain. Why? Because kosava Rabbi Meir that benoisen shikloi shalom. One second. So based on that, kosava Rabbi Meir that benoisen shikloi shalom, that if someone gives a real full shekel, which is what the Mishnah will call a selah, is if I'm giving a selah for me and for you, how many kolbanis do I have to give? 2. Because if every half a shekel has to come with a kolbain, so if I give a shekel shalom, which is a selah, I have to give 2 kolbanis. The Amar Rav Meir. Guys, we are familiar with this chazal, but we're not familiar with how Rav Meir understands it. That when God, there are 3 times that Moshe Rabbeinu needed God to show him. One of them is here, half a shekel. And God showed it to Moshe, the fiery half a shekel. And he tells them, Zeh Yitnu. Yesterday we had Zeh Yitnu, Zayin Hey, Yud Bei Shvatim. Today we're learning Zeh, that God pointed with his finger and he told Moshe that cause Zeh Yitnu. Now, so what? So let's go the Nigland and the Chasidus. And therefore, since the half a shekel that we might give might not be exactly the way the half a shekel God showed Moshe. If God was specific, mamish like this, kozem. So to make sure now, when they use coins, after a while, some of the metal got rubbed out. It could be that the half a shekel that we are giving is a little bit less than that ruchniistic coin that Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu. So to make sure that we are giving it take kizeh, you have to add the kalban. Alpi Chasidus, that the kasha that Moshe Rabbeinu did not understand is that since the half a shekel was given l'chaper al nafshei seichem for the greatest sin of the egel, he couldn't understand how can such a relatively insignificant amount of money, how can that bring an atonement for such a great aveda? And what God showed Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not about the value of the money, it's about the fire that you are imbuing in the money. It's about your excitement of doing the mitzvah. It has to be a fiery coin. Where do we see that a Yid is doing something with fire? You know where that shows expression? When we go a little bit beyond the obligation. So when we do what I'm obligated to do, it could be I don't have any fire. God said I'm doing it. But if I don't enjoy it, if I'm not passionate about it, I will never do beyond what God said. But the moment I feel a fire, I'm excited to do a mitzvah, it will express itself by me going a little bit beyond. Now, it's almost a paradox because here we are demanding you to go a little bit beyond, but it doesn't matter. Bottom line is based on the kozem, Rab Meir understands that everyone is mechoyev to give the kalbain, even when you are only giving a half a shekel. When you give a full selah, then you give 2 kolbanis.
Rabbi.
Yes.
If I'm understanding this, then even if you give for somebody else, you would also, according to Rab Meir, have to give the kalbain. It's always a half shekel plus the kalbain, correct?
Very good. Everything we learned in the Mishnah was shittas Tanach. In other words, waiving of the half a shekel, the waiving of a half a shekel is all based on the half a shekel being a din derabanan, correct? So either give or don't give. If midoiraisa, you have to give a half a shekel and a kalbain, so then give the half a shekel and a kalbain. Now,
Rabbi, I'm trying to understand, Rabbi.
No.
How much is a kalban? How many dinarim? I'm trying to understand how much is a kalban in relative to the.
Okay, so the Mishnah Shlomo says a kalban is either a ma'a kesef. A ma'a kesef is a sixth of a dinar. A half a shekel is 2 dinarim. So the kalban is either a sixth of a dinar or it's a 12th of a dinar. Those are the two shittas in the Mishnah. Yeah, Rabbi Chaim. So again, according to Rav Meir, whenever you give, part of half you're giving half a shekel, God meant a half a shekel plus a kalban. If not, you didn't give it. And you can give donations to the Beis Hamikdash, you can give money to the Bedek Habayis, but it's not going to go in the half a shekel fund. The whole point of the half a shekel is that everyone should give a half a shekel. If half a shekel demands a kalban, then always give a kalban. Now, the Mishnah said like this, that Nosan Sela little shekel, the Mishnah says, not I'm giving for me and for you as a gift, for me and for you as a loan. No, the Mishnah gave that one-liner, if I'm giving only for me, and I'm giving 1 selah, and therefore I'm going to get change, right? I'm giving a selah, the Lashon HaMishnah, I'm getting back a shekel. So the Mishnah says, I have to give 2 kolbonos. Now, who made that statement? It's an amazing Gemara. Amar Abu Lazar. That can only be Rav Meir. That at least every donation has to come with a kolboin. That in the that Meir Omar Echad Shekel Shuhu Noisen. You give a shekel, you have to get a kolboin. The Echad Sela Shuhu Noitel, right? Whenever you get change, I would go to a banker and I would get change, not to half a shekel. He would if I give a seller to a banker and he's gonna and I want half back, he's gonna want the kolboin. For the exchange fee during that time of the year, every time the money changer parted with a half a shekel, he wants to get a kolboin for that. How the Tanya Elu Chayavin B'kolboin, we're proving the Braisa is speaking exactly about the case of our Mishnah of a person. That's the Braisa. A person gave 1 selah, they're getting back in return 1 shekel. So the Chachamim hold only 1 kolboin. That's Shittas Tanakama. But it's only Rav Meir that holds 2 kolbonos. The 2 would remain for the Bedek Habayis. It would remain in the Bedek Habayis. Huh? The money changer is a Bedek Habayis. Since if I would have gone to a money changer, I would have to pay this little added kolboin. So we went for the Beis Hamikdash to get it. Now, the Chiddush here, guys, Rav Amar, that's the gears on the side. Rav says no. Now this is huge. That even the Chachamim hold that if I give 1 selah and I'm getting back half as change because I'm only giving for me, I have to leave with the Beis Hamikdash 2 kolbonos. It's even the Divrei HaKoil. You know what we're going to actually see? It's not that Chachamim will hold like Rav Meir. Rav Meir will hold 3 kolbonos. But what's the cheshbon of 2 kolbonos according to the Chachamim? Because the Omar, now this is the Tanakama, Echad Shekel Shuhu Noisen. The Tanakama is the one that subscribes to it. The Echad Shekel Shuhu Noitel. In other words, guys, listen, you have to expand the mind a little bit. Last time around, Danny got challenged a lot over here. We view it as 2 separate transactions. We view this as 2 separate transactions. Like I mentioned, the reason why the Chachamim hold you have to give a kalboin, it's a darabanan, is because this time of the year, the half a shekel has, so to say, it's a desired coinage because many people just gave the half a shekel. So money changers would charge a little bit more for it. There was a big demand for these. There was a shortage of half shekel coins. Forget about giving the half a shekel. If I would go to a money changer and I would give him a seller and I would get back change, he would charge me for giving me a half a shekel. He would charge me a kalboin. Remember that. Every time I take from a money changer a half a shekel, when I give him a larger coin or 2 smaller coins, doesn't make a difference, 2 separate dinarim, he charges for that. Separate from that, when I give the Beis Hamikdash a selah, the Chachamim said, whenever you're not giving a half a shekel, you have to give a kalboin. Even though it's really 1 transaction, I'm giving the selah to get back a half a shekel. Just for giving the Beis Hamikdash a non-half a shekel, you have to give a kalboin. Getting back a half a shekel, You would normally leave by a money changer a half a shekel, even though here it's the same transaction. We view it as two transactions. If I give a seller for me and for you, and you're obligated to give it, and I'm giving it as a loan, then I have to leave one kalban, because at least I'm not getting money back. According to the Chachamim, I'm not going to leave two kalbanis. I leave one kalban, even though the Beis Hamikdash is getting 2 half shekels. But the point is that they got one seller, one kalban. But since I'm getting back change, we view it as two transactions. And you know what? Not only does Rav Meir agree to that, but then he goes a step further. Aside of you having to leave with the Holy Temple 2 kolbanos, one for the giving and one for the getting back, aside of that, there's a biblical law that for every half a shekel, you have to give a kalban. Rav Meir says you'll have to leave 3 kolbanos. All right, let's sit with this. Let's go weiter. And the echad, so echad shekel shul noisen, the echad shekel shul noitel. And now if you're going to go with the parentheses, and Rav Meir would add a third, the echad l'divrei Torah. Al date the Rav gimel kolbanos in. And according to Rav, not according to the first shita that we had over here, not according to Rabbi Zajac, according to Rav, that even according to the Tanach, when you give one seller and you get change, the divrei hakol doesn't mean Rav Meir says only 2. Rav Meir says 2 plus 3. 2 l'divrei hakol, and according to Rav Meir, a third. And indeed, also Rav Yirmiyah and the Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, in the name of Rav, again the same Rav, and they hold that shloisher kolbanos inun. That's according to Rav Meir. Echad shekel shul noisen. Whenever you give a shekel here means a seller. You're not giving the Beis Hamikdash, you got to give a kolban. Whenever you receive a half a shekel back from the temple treasurer, just like if you would go to the bank, they would charge you for that. You got to leave it. And then l'shitas Rabbi Meir, that there's a din Torah. Let's learn it al pi nigla. When you give a half a shekel, maybe your half a shekel was not valuable enough. Maybe it wasn't the size of the kizeh that God showed Moshe. So to make sure you're giving that amount of weight, then you got to add the kolban. Okay. It's growing, bekitzer. Just a half a shekel, Baruch Hashem. Now, the last thing we learned in the Mishnah, let's see how far we can get. As we explained, there is a gzeirus hakosov based on psukim that when 2 partners own animals together, they don't give meiser behema. However, when a father passes away and the estate is not yet divided, and we call that tfisas habayis, the holding of an estate, we don't view the brothers as partners. We view the estate to belong to the father. Why can the children eat off it? Because they're an extension of their father. They are in the place of the father. But it's not viewed as a partnership. Therefore, Meiser Behema, the exemption of Shutfim, will not go for them. But in the flip, in the reverse, we learned that if I give a shekel for you as a gift, I don't have to give the kolbain. So if the Tfisas Habayis, let's say they're 2 sons, and it's going to give the Beis Hamikdash 1 seller for both sons, it won't have to add a kolbain. If they divide the Tfisas Habayis, even if they then reconnect, so we're going to say, the division was like a sale. The reconnection is a new partnership. So let's read it inside. If they also became partners, which means that they divided the Tfisas Habayis and then they re-partnered up. Now we view them as bona fide partners. And therefore, if they give together, if 2 brothers give from their joint account now, they give the seller, they will be obligated to give the kolbain. Why? Because no one is giving a gift on behalf of anyone. I'm giving for me and for you. I'm giving for me and for you, according to Rav Meir, 2 kolbanos. According to the Chachamim, 1 kolban. Whenever you give to the temple, you don't give them a half a shekel, you add a kolban. However, since this is a bona fide partnership, so then a p'turim b'meiser behema. Now, when do we say that their division of the estate and then their re-partnering up is considered now they are partners? That's b'shecholku. They first divided, and then the chazor of an ishtatfu. However, we're just explaining the Mishnah, in the case where you have heirs, and we will say that they are chayavim b'meiser behema. Why would heirs be chayav b'meiser behema? The Torah says shutfim are not chayav. That's speaking about heirs that never divided the estate of the father. It's still called tfisas habayis. Tfisas habayis is not a partnership. The father is the balabas, which is taka why they're parted from meiser behema. If the father is the balabas, then there's going to be something amazing. And that will be, on one hand, it will be chayiv and meiser behema. But when it comes to them using the Tfisa Sabayis fund to pay for two of the brothers' shekel, and they're giving the Beis Hamikdash a sela, they'll be exempted from a kalboin. Because here it's the father giving for his children, and that is B'Shalei Chilkoi, because they did not yet divide the estate. Now here we have a Gavaldike Machlekes. Omar Rabbi Lezer, weiter. Says Rabbi Lezer, that when do we say that when the heirs divide the estate, and then they reconstitute their partnership, they are viewed now as bona fide partners. We don't say that if they divided the estate and then they mamish reunited, it's as if they never divided the estate. You know when we don't say that? That's only the hein shechilku gediyim keneged tiyashim. Just as an example, the father left goats and he left kids and he left rams, goats and sheep. So if now really, theoretically, all of the kids have a part in everything. If they decided initially to divide the estate that one brother only gets the gedoyim, one son only gets the tiyashim, that's called a real sale. That's called a real division. Because I owned half of each, you owned half of each. Why am I getting all of one type and you're getting all of another type? It's keilu, I sold you my chelik in what you're taking, and how did you pay? By giving me your chelik in what I'm taking. That is where we view their division as a real division, almost like a sale. So even if they reconstitute and everything goes back into a communal pot, it's now called a partnership. Because we undid the Tfisa Sabayis, and now we're making a new partnership. But if when we divided the Tfisa Sabayis, the father left 100 Gedim and 100 Tiyashim. Let's say there's no din b'chayra. I took 50, you took 50. You took 50, I took 50. And then we decided, let's go come back together again. When we divided every item into two, so we say, we view it as if the partnership was never dissolved. And this is based on the principle of bereid, of retroactive clarification. If I'm going to take only the gedoyim, and you're going to take only the tiyashim, that's completely undoing the Tfisa Sabayis. But if we're Pashat going fair, from every item, every brother gets half. We view it that this is always that way. Retroactively, the father left two sons, so each one gets half. We don't even view that as a division. And if we reunite, then we reconstituted the Tfisa Sabayis. And we're not considered partners, for good and for bad. We're not considered partners, so we're chayiv in Meiser Behema. We're not considered partners, and we're going to be patur from the kalboy. However, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, he disagrees with that. He says, "Afilu chilku gedoyim keneged gedoyim and tiyashim keneged tiyashim." Doesn't matter. When the father passed away, it was one tfisa sabayis, it was one estate. Even if we made a logical division, he does not subscribe to bereda. That's what this boils down to. It's not like it was always that way. No, we made a change. Before everyone owned everything, a part of everything. Now I only get one part, you only get another part. That's considered a sale. The moment we view the brothers, they sold to each other a part of the estate, and then they reconstitute, that's called, and then they brought it back together, that's called already a new partnership. And therefore, and when they reconstitute, according to Rabbi, they're partners, and partners are exempt from Meiser. And Kahid Tanin and Taman, like we learned over there, Mishnah im Masechta is B'chayres, that halakua. When do we say, right, that I'm chayiv to give Meiser Behema if it was born into my flock? The moment I bought an animal, or if I received an animal as a gift, I'm exempt from Meiser Behema. So it's I would not word it the way you're saying it, is that the Torah is promoting partnership by giving an incentive. The point is that it has to fully be, the chiyuv is if it's fully mine. If it wasn't, even if I bought it, then it's fully mine, I'm not chayiv. Zikr partners, it's only part mine, I'm not chayiv. So it's gavaldik. So when children divide an estate, and then they decide right afterwards, you know what, let's put it all back together. If the division of the estate was that from every item, every brother got a part, if you subscribe to Bereira, then it's not really considered a division yet. It was always that way. And if they come back together and let's work together, they're not called partners. If you don't subscribe to the principle of retroactive clarification, that no matter how rational you made the division, that's called a division. And once you make a division, if you reunite, now you're making a new partnership with this inverse relationship of whenever you chayv in ma'aseh behema, you put them in a kalba. Whenever you chayv in the kalba, you put them for ma'aseh behema. Chevra, to be continued. Baruch Hashem, we covered the ground today.
Shkach.